Are you ready?
Hello, and welcome to the Whole House Podcast, where we promise to bring you home, health, and family all in one place. We're a blog team trying our hand at podcasting, and we like to compare our different purposes and giftings and strengths to the rooms in a house. Together, we make up the whole house. So grab a cup of coffee and join our overly caffeinated team here for the Whole House Podcast. Hi, and welcome to the Whole House. We're here on a very, very cold January day. We're huddled around a space heater, and we're going to start out our podcast today with a little bit of a fun question for each of us. I want everyone to take a moment to say,
why didn't you prepare us?
No, I want you to wait.
Wait, what?
Okay.
Oh my gosh, what are we going to have to answer?
What is something, because we just kicked off a new year, what is something that you've done in the last few days that was life-giving?
Oh, can I go first? Because I'm ready for this
Yes,
one.
go.
Okay, so it's like Carly said, it's January, so about 5 months ago I had my third baby, and ever since I had her, I've been in this slump of like not having a routine, not getting dressed, not doing anything, walking around thinking that my house is messy all the time and that I can't get anything done and I can't get laundry done. So literally like February 1st, I woke up and I started doing a routine.
January 1st?
January. It doesn't mean I have more energy. Just because it's life-giving doesn't mean I have more energy. But I woke up and I started doing a routine and following through with the goals that I set for myself for the days, which were just little things like doing chores with the girls and doing schoolwork with Cecilia and all of those kind of things, and it has literally been like changing and life-giving. Like I feel so much better at the end of the day, and halfway through the day I feel like I've actually done things and I don't feel like crying. So yay! So that is a big change.
Okay, my thing was the first day, so New Year's Day, we got invited to an Egyptian family's house for their toddler's birthday party. And so my life-giving thing was experiencing Egyptian hospitality. And so it was really, like, so they're still on a fast until, like, the 6th. And so they don't eat meat until the 6th of January. But they cooked all this food that had meat, so it was only for us.
Oh,
and they expected us to eat it all.
Well, that was nice, though.
It was very nice. So they only ate one dish. All the rest of the food was for everyone else.
Huh.
It sounds like my life.
Yeah. But yeah, that was my life-giving thing. I kicked off the year like learning Egyptian hospitality.
I think I'm the opposite of Amory right now because we've been so school-focused up until this point that the break time is for us to just be like, and reset. Mm-hmm. We are still personally on break. I'm not sure when this is going to go, but
Thank you for announcing yourself.
I'm actually going to go back.
but it's actually it's breathing new life in me just to be able to take a little bit of a break.
Well, I think mine is similar because my life-giving thing is kind of selfish like that too, but it's been more about investigating and studying things that work for my body. I've spent a lot more time over this break figuring out what works best for me, and one of the things that kind of confirmed something in me, I love to walk, but learning about my body type is my body type needs to walk at least an hour a day, and for some reason that just calms my adrenals and keeps those cortisol levels. And so this frigid spell that we're having has kind of helped me in that area because I keep running down to my treadmill and hopping on for half an hour a couple times a day, and
just to stay warm.
Yeah, just to stay warm, no problem. I'm getting in that hour and sometimes more. But I sleep better, I feel better.
Nice.
So
You want to know what I've been doing to stay warm? Staying in my room. room. Because it's warm in there.
Yeah. So we are kind of like, we're kicking off a new year. We're kind of all feeling refreshed.
Yeah.
And today our podcast topic is going to be the Guire adoption story. So Kathleen is just going to start off where she wants to start with her adoption story.
Well, I'm going to start off with the fact that I wrote a book about it, and I'm re-releasing it with a new fresh cover and a study guide in the back, and it's called A Positive Adoption Story, The Door from Theology to Reality, because it's not just my story as per se a linear story. I actually weave in my childhood and kind of lessons I learned along the way with the adoption of a sibling group of 4 from Poland, including our 5-week stay there. And Carly said that she was going to kind of put some questions together for me, because I don't want to just walk through the whole book and tell you everything, because that obviously would be no fun. And Carly's really good at picking up questions. And we also have Amory here today. Of course, we're all here, but Amory, of course, took part in that adoption story as a child. So we want to put her 2 cents in.
Yeah, she'll be able to give kind of a unique sibling perspective on international adoption.
Yeah.
So let's start off by talking about, when did you and Jerry first know that you were going to adopt internationally?
That's a good question. Okay, all right, those are kind of 2 separate questions for me, because when Jerry and I got married, we had a discussion and said we're going to adopt someday. Mm-hmm. And we actually had an adoption that didn't work out before we even had children. And I don't talk about that in the book, so you're getting bonus information here. We had a young teen that was actually staying with my sister Annie, and she was pregnant, and she'd asked Jerry and I to take her baby, and we said yes. She'd even written a letter to the baby, the whole 9 yards. She was prepared. But then after she had the baby, she changed her mind. And that was fine. That worked out really well for her, and I'm so proud of her and so glad that she was able to find a place to live and to find work and all those sorts of things that she needed to do in order to keep the baby. But that just stayed in our hearts. And when we decided to adopt it, we kind of put it on hold till about 10 years while we had 3 children. And then we started looking into adoption here in the United States domestically, and there were a lot of bad things going on domestically, like bio parents coming back and saying, I changed my mind 3 years later.
Oh.
Well, and what year would this have been?
This would have been 1998.
So the laws may have been
time ago.
The laws may have been more lax.
Yes.
I'm sure there's been a lot of legislation pertaining to adoption since then.
There's been some change in the time frame that you can do that, yes. So Jerry is from Poland. So we decided to go with Poland, and we worked for an agency that only does adoptions in Poland called Huminski's Angels. It is now dissolved because it was just a small agency, and they kind of got swallowed up by a larger one, so I don't want you to be looking on the internet for that agency. They no longer exist. They only did adoptions in Poland, and to adopt in Poland, you have to prove that you're Polish. So we had to get a certified letter from Jerry's grandfather saying when he came over to the States and all those sorts of things. So
let's talk about like being matched with your sibling group.
Okay, and that's
I like this story. It's an interesting.
Do you want to tell this story?
I don't know that I know this story.
It's a very interesting story. We were eating at Ponderosa one day. That was restaurant.
Wait. Let me say
Which
this.
part of the story are you referring to?
First of all,
Okay.
we were at you guys you were originally only looking to adopt one little boy.
Yes.
That's a very important preface to the story. You were originally only looking to adopt one little boy.
So that's why I said which part of the story. Where do I come in?
At the beginning.
Okay.
The very beginning.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we were eating at Ponderosa.
We were eating at Ponderosa. And we'd already filled out a bunch of paperwork for Huminski's Angels. And Jerry got a phone call from the coordinator. And she asked, will you take 3 children? And I was sitting out with my 3 original Guires eating, and Jerry came out and asked me that question in front of the whole restaurant. And if any of you know Jerry, he's a very large presence wherever he is. And when Jerry talks, people listen. So
you should also know that he was the owner of this Ponderosa.
Yeah.
So he was like running the place and coming out to announce this.
Yes. So my face is red, not only from the sun streaming in the windows, but also from the pressure. And I said, could we think about it? Do we have to answer right now? And she had let him know that we had a couple days to think about it because, interestingly enough, in Poland, they're 99% Catholic, so they don't believe in birth control. So people have large families very quickly, and they have these large groups of children sitting in orphanages who need families, and these families often get broken up because of us being like, oh, we want a boy and we only want one and that's all we want. So we said, so we prayed about it, and I just could not let that go. So we said yes. Yes, we will take 3 children. 3. And if you're doing math in your head right now, and I had already said another number, you'll figure out that the story continues.
Okay, so keep going. Let's jump ahead a little bit. You have done all your paperwork stuff. You've been matched with kids. Let's talk about going to Poland.
Okay, so can I start like 2 weeks before we traveled? Okay,
yes, sure.
So we're matched to 3. Damien, Gregory, and Anya, who were 7, 5, and 4 at the time. So that kind of matched our family. That would give us stair-step children. Everything's working out right, coming up daisies, whatever. So our coordinator called us. We had already bought our tickets. We already had INS approval, all of those things in order. Our coordinator calls us and says, guess what? Your attorney in Poland found out that there is a younger sibling, an infant. What's customary is just protocol is our attorney in Poland went to the orphanage to visit the children that we were going to adopt and asked them, do you want to be adopted by this nice American couple? It's kind of a formality. And the oldest, Damien, said, what about the baby? And our attorney said, what baby? And Damien said, I remember that when we were taken from the home, that our mother was pregnant. And of course, I'm putting my words in. He probably didn't say it that eloquently. He just remembered. So our attorney in Poland went on a search and found this baby just 15 kilometers away in another orphanage. So what did we say? Of course we want the baby. How could we separate these siblings? I could not even imagine. And one little extra story, and Amory might even remember this, we went to the Gap to go shopping for all the kids.
It was the best day.
It was the best day ever. And we didn't know whether the baby was a girl or a boy. So we're just buying mint green and yellow, and we're buying all of these clothes.
You filled out these, we went to Poland and we didn't just take suitcases. Mom filled up huge tubs, big storage tubs of clothes, of arts and crafts stuff, of toys, all these kind of things to take to these kids, because Poland had just, 10 years before come out of a communist culture, and of course they're still living with that communist culture in an orphanage. Right. Mm-hmm. So she brought all of these things to give to the kids. So that's what we did. We went to Gap and we just bought a ton of clothes for each kid, and
it was a fun day.
Yeah, it was a fun day, and we went and got to pick out crayons and coloring books. And we'll start again.
Well,
Gloria sad that the space heater turned off.
She got really sad.
Did.
So we filled up all those things, and I remember those big tubs. I don't know. That had to be a ton of extra money to
I
find
was
those
going to
over there.
say, the part I remember is paying all the extra money to take those over.
As a child, I don't remember that part,
But here's an interesting thing that Amory may not remember exactly the details of because she was so young. I'm heaping all of these clothes on the counter
yeah.
and paying absorbent amounts of money for them. And the manager of the Gap
I remember
started crying. She just started crying. And I said, because I had explained to her what we were doing, and she said, now I'm going to cry. She said, I was adopted, and I'm from a sibling group of 5, and I've never met my siblings.
Wow.
They were all adopted. She just kept saying over and over again while she was crying, get the baby, please get the baby. So I had to get the baby to complete her life story for her.
Okay, so now, are you ready to go to Poland now?
To go, oh yes,
Yes.
go to Poland. I was like, right now?
In your story.
It's too cold.
No, in your story.
Okay. At what point do you want me to start
was
in
so
Poland?
cold in Poland.
The first meeting with the lawyers? I'll start there.
Sure.
Okay. So we'd been up on a plane. We'd been up for 24 straight hours.
And you took the whole family.
We took the whole family. And the first thing that we did was we were supposed to meet our attorneys in the lobby of the hotel, including the lady who ran that particular firm who held, did adoptions. So we had like half an hour to put our stuff in the room, run back down. We were exhausted. I remember splashing cold water on my face like, wake up, this is important. So we get down to the lobby, and the 3 attorneys were there. One of them was acting as an interpreter also. And the first thing they said was, why did you bring your children? And Jerry said, well, Mimi knew that. She was our coordinator. Oops, I said her real name. Real names are not in the book for that purpose. But anyway, she wouldn't mind. So they were upset that we brought our children because no one else who had ever gone through their firm had ever brought their children on the trip before.
Interesting.
Which was insane.
Yeah.
To me.
It was insane.
You're just like
to us.
separating the children and being like, these are the originals
Yeah.
and these are the newbies, and they can't meet for months and months and months and months and months.
Right, and that's exactly what we thought. We wanted our kids to experience the culture, to see where their siblings had come from and be able to bond right away. So that's why we brought our children. Well, a little problem there. They had nowhere to put us. They weren't expecting that. So anyway, that was the first little bit of tension, which built from there. Because the second huge bit of tension was our attorney had contacted the judge about us adopting the infant, and she said no. Because infants are easier to adopt, we'll have other families that will come along. So Jerry asked, well, everybody was talking at once. That's kind of a cultural thing. They all talk at once. And so everybody's talking in Polish, and we're sipping our hot chocolate and cappuccinos going, we have no idea what's going on. We're in a strange country. We don't really know these people. We've only, talked through an agency. What if they just take our money and run? Or what if they, all kinds of things are going through our head. And then suddenly Jerry says, what about the baby? And one of the attorneys spoke in English for the first time and said, forget about the baby. That's impossible. Adopt the 3 you came for and just never mention that again. So that was a very tense meeting, and it kind of ended on a very negative note, unfortunately. And so we were sent to our rooms, pretty much reprimanded. Go to your room. Don't leave the hotel. It's scary out there. Don't talk to people.
Which is true. We almost got kidnapped by the Polish mob. So they're totally different story.
Yes, we did. That's a whole other
We'll
story.
save
Well, that's one of them. I was almost kidnapped by the mob. And I'm drinking Emery's water.
No, that's okay.
So anyway, we went to our hotel room and we prayed. That's all we could do. And the next day we were picked up by a taxi. They put us all in one taxi and we were squished like little sardines. We went to meet the director of orphans, and it was a couple-hour trip. And I'm going to butcher the name of the city, but it's Piotrków is where we went, and that's where the director of orphans was. And as soon as we got there, this lady came running out of the building, and she was the director of orphans. And I hopped out of the car, and she kissed me on both cheeks and said, "Do you want to see the baby?" And I thought, well, that's really cruel. Why would she ask me if I wanted to do that? And then she said, "Do you want to adopt the baby?" And I said, yes. And she said, "If you do, then I will speak to the judge for you." And what had happened was, even though first of all, God, that's what happened. He took the impossible and turned it into possible. And even though that first meeting with our attorneys was very tense, they were observing our children and were bragging about them to everybody in that adoption circle.
Thank you very much.
Well, they continued to. For the whole 5 weeks we were there, they just could not get over how well behaved our children were and how they just interacted with anybody and everybody. So,
you had your 3 American children in Poland for 5 weeks. Amory, I want to know what you remember about it.
I remember that.
How old were you?
I was 8.
Okay.
Right? 8
yes,
or 7, yeah.
You were 8.
The biggest thing that I remember is that most of the kids spoke English, is because English is a second language in their schools, but not just that. In Europe, they teach languages differently. You have whole classes in that language where nothing but that language is spoken in order for you to learn it. So all the kids could talk to us, but and the adults too. So I remember that. We stayed in the orphanage, so I remember interacting with the kids, and I remember the games that they played were just different than the games that we played and things like that. So, but I also remember going out. My biggest thing that I remember, and this just has to do with Polish culture. Because it's like the thing that sticks out in my head all the time, and then I'll talk more about the adoption. The biggest thing that I remember is going shopping with my dad one day, and we went to their version of a mall. And everything is behind the counter, and you pointed to it, and you said you wanted it, and we needed towels, and so my dad went and was like, he picked out a certain color towel. We were standing in front of a counter talking to a man, and he was like, "I want this color towel," and the guy just gave him the pile of towels that that color was in, and they were all assorted colors because they just had that one color.
Yeah, you couldn't say, he wanted 10 towels.
Yeah.
Oh.
I want 10 tangerine towels. It was like, no, we only have one tangerine towel.
So you just have to have this stack of 10 towels that are all these different colors. So I remember that. The biggest thing that I remember, and Mom will probably get here eventually, is that we stayed in the hotel that we met the lawyers in for 1 or 2 nights, and then we moved to this really frigid, cold, unheated castle, and which I probably now would appreciate more, but as a little kid it was just cold.
Maybe in the summer.
Yeah. And then we actually stayed in the orphanage. So I remember meeting my brothers and sisters, Anya and Damien and Gregory, and I was so excited to have a sister and to have them. And I don't even remember thinking then that they were different than me or anything. I just thought that they were I automatically thought that they were my brothers and sisters. I did not feel like I had to really get to know them or anything like that, because kids don't really have to do that. You just start playing with each other. Yeah.
Okay.
And so that's what it was like. And we had this little apartment in the orphanage, and it was just 2 bedrooms, a little hallway, and a bathroom. And I just remember them coming and staying, like playing with us in those 2 little bedrooms, and thinking that it was like the best thing ever to have all of these kids to play with. And my mom was probably like, oh my gosh, there are all these kids in these 2 little rooms.
They were tiny rooms. And one of their favorite things to do was take all the mattresses off.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Go ahead, say it from your point.
Well, we would build forts with the mattresses, but we would also jump on the mattresses and slide down them and all those kind of things. So
yeah, and Gregory has a scar on his forehead to prove that.
Yes. So I just remember having to entertain ourselves in those little teeny tiny rooms, and feeling very attached to my siblings already, because the day that, the week after my parents found out the sibling group we would be getting, they showed us pictures, they talked to us, so we talked about them all the time. And it wasn't, and I'm grateful that we got to go, because it wasn't like I was separated from them. From the moment my parents met them, I had met them, and they were a part of my life. And then I also remember very clearly going to visit the baby for the first time, and just being so excited about being a baby, and he would always grab my hair and all of those kind of things. So I was little, but the things that I remember most is just that those bonds were naturally there. That's what I remember, is that I didn't feel like there was a language barrier between me and my little sister, who didn't even really talk. I didn't feel like...
She didn't really even speak Polish.
Yeah.
Anya didn't. She kind of had her own language. Because we did have an interpreter, a college student. Yeah. She stayed with us. And she would just say, I don't know what she's saying. She's just making up her own words. Yeah.
So I just remember those kind
My
of things.
2-year-old does that.
Yeah, I remember going to dinner, and their cuisine is all obviously different than ours, and asking for different things. And the cook, I feel like he tried to do more for us, because accommodate us. And I wish now that I hadn't been so demanding as an 8-year-old.
Oh yeah, they went out and bought rice because Amory kept asking for it. But here's some of the adult perspective. This was back in 1999 when we traveled. So to you, some of you had barely been wearing diapers at that time, But anyway, and I'm sure it's the same there today. The cooks took the van and daily went down to the market and bought the chickens and the eggs and the whatever they needed for that day. But here's another thing that we learned a couple days before we left the orphanage. The director told us that we kind of paid them rent to stay there. We felt like it was our duty to help, because we would have spent that on hotel rooms anyway. And he told us, hope you try not to cry, that they had run out of money for that month.
For the food.
And some large corporation had come to the orphanage and said, we really want to donate all new furniture. We want to redo the whole inside of the orphanage. And the director had said, but what we really need is food. And they said, no, we're going to do the... So they did the furniture, which was very, very nice of them. It was a very needed thing. But the money that we paid to stay there paid for the food for a month.
Wow.
Fed all the kids, all 57
awesome.
Kids in the orphanage.
And you weren't required to do that.
No,
you just felt led to do it.
They would have let us stay there for free.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so what kind of concluded your 5-week trip? Because you didn't bring the kids home at the end of that trip, right?
No, that's not the way that...
I think you should also tell about how you ended up getting the baby.
Oh, okay. All right. I'll do both of those. And okay. So what really happened was the director of orphans did go and talk to the judge. And then she worked with the 2 attorneys that were on our case. And what they did was they petitioned the court after the initial hearing that we adopted these 3, therefore we should get this one, because Polish law says if that particular birth mother has another child, it's automatically ours.
Oh.
That's just the way it works. So they kind of set that up. legally, that's how they got through that loophole. And so what ended up that last week in the orphanage was, first of all, a lot of sadness and a lot of trying to explain to children that we were coming back. And we made a calendar for Damien. He was 7 at the time. And he took it upstairs and put it in his dresser drawer. And half an hour later, it had been stolen. That's the culture of an orphanage. So I made a very much less artistic one because we had one of the art students in the orphanage make one for him. And we went to our final court hearing a couple days before we left Warsaw. We left Warsaw on December 19th. And because of Y2K, well, yeah, it really was a real thing. It did affect people, not in the way that some people thought.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah,
I remember.
We weren't stocking up tons and billions of things in our basement like some people were, but it did delay the adoption because we were supposed to be able to travel back a couple weeks later after all the paperwork had been finished. The kids had all gone to their final doctor's appointments because we took them all to get their passports and all that sort of stuff while we were there. So we came back on December 19th and we were not able or permitted to go back and get the children till February 14th.
Okay.
Because of all the delay of Y2K.
So you planned on a couple weeks and it ended up being 2 months.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
So I'm sure it was like you were like really longing for that.
I felt like my heart was
in Poland
connected to 2 continents.
Yeah.
Like half of it was in Poland and half of it was in the United States, and Christmas was really, really hard for me that year because I had to leave them. And I know that I had the paperwork that said I could go back and get them, but there were absolutely no physical guarantees that they would be there or that everything would be the way they said it would be. And those weeks were so long waiting. And I'm so thankful for my family and friends because Ellen Jane Parks came and put up my Christmas tree. And Etika Sands baked us a bunch of baked goodies and people came over and wrapped presents, or else I would have told the kids there is no Christmas this year because they felt the same way. Yeah. Sorry, we're all gray now. So it was a very, very difficult couple months. And at the same time, my stepfather, Bud, who lived with us, ended up very ill and in ICU, and he had an aneurysm burst in his stomach. So all of these things were all happening at once. And it's like Charles Dickens says, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. You can have spring and winter all coming at the same time, and that's what we had when we finally got that call that, yes, you can come, you can go back, and you can get the kids. Jerry and I decided that I wouldn't go because if we were both on that plane.
That didn't happen, though. Don't cry about that.
And something would have happened, then there would have been 2 sets of kids with no parents instead of one. And of course, the ones in Poland would have suffered more because I at least had family here in the States. So we did, finally travel. Jerry.
So who went the second trip?
My dad. Dr. Ken Craven, who had just gotten back.
And Jerry.
And Jerry. And my dad had just gotten back from the Middle East, and he's used to traveling all over the globe. So, and he was very excited to take part in that journey. And
I can imagine him really excited about that.
Didn't so much like the red tape of standing in the embassy or that sort of thing, but he did it.
Yeah. So how long was Jerry and Ken's the trip to get the kids?
That was just a week.
Just a week.
It was actually just 4 days of running around and doing a bunch of stuff.
So I would actually really love to have seen Jerry and Grandune juggling 4 Polish kids, including a baby.
Yes.
Oh, I would love to watch that.
Yes. And it was also winter still.
Yes.
It was very, very cold in Warsaw,
So
so they rode the train down to Slave to get the kids and pick them all up and then get back on the train and ride all the way back to Warsaw and then go through paperwork and doctor's visits. And unfortunately for kids who are adopted internationally, often they get all of their vaccinations in one day, which set Anya into extreme sickness. She had a temperature of 104.
Her kidneys weren't very good to
Her
begin
kidneys,
with.
So,
Huh.
So, it was,
So, they came
the
home.
moment we were in the air, we all went to the airport, and when I mean we all went to the airport, I mean we did, like, our immediate family, me and my sister and my brother and my mom, and then our close friend Patty Herlin and her kids, and then Annie and Mark and their kids, and
Ruth and Stephen.
Yeah, so it was another couple who had adopted from Poland. They brought their kids, so a lot of people were there.
Yes.
And it was late. Was it late at night? I remember it being late at night. I'll let you finish because I just remember the excitement.
Honestly, I remember just the excitement too. It's all a very blurry thing when first of all, we were at the wrong gate and we watched all these people get off and we were all looking at each other, and then my friend Ruth came running over and said, "We're at the wrong gate, let's move." So we moved to another gate, and then when they came out of that tube, I was just so overwhelmed with joy and relief that they were there and that they were going to be part of our family forever, and they didn't have to ever go back to that orphanage. And I just remember Josiah, who's my nephew, and just running around with the boys and running around with Damien and Gregory. And for Damien and Gregory and Anya, now Rafael, I just kind of held him. He was a baby.
How old was he?
He was 17 months.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and he didn't walk. He was developmentally delayed in a lot of areas, so he was content just to hold on to me. But the boys, Damien and Gregory, were running around with Josiah, and you have to understand that this airport itself, much less the strange faces, was completely overwhelming to them. They'd probably never been on an escalator or, all of those things. So it was just overwhelmingly joyous, a celebration.
Gregory was convinced he was in Chicago.
Yes, because that's where all the Polish people
He was
live.
for some reason, he was convinced that when he got adopted and came to America, he was going to live in Chicago. And he would walk around the orphanage singing, "I'm going to live in Chicago. I'm going to live in Chicago."
Yep.
He's probably still disappointed, too. And Anya was sick though too.
Yes.
So Audrey held Rafael because you held Anya.
Right. I held Rafael for a couple minutes and handed him over, and we ended up having to take Anya to the doctor the very next morning.
Yeah. But I remember, so like we said, it was late, but of course there's jet lag and everything like that. So I remember after we got home and which Mom now, as a mother, I don't know how you got us all to bed. With all the excitement, and I'm sure that everybody was tired, but how did you settle? I don't know. And then I remember at 3 o'clock in the morning, everybody was awake again.
Yes.
And we went in the playroom and we were playing puppets, and the boys were playing with the car racetrack and all those kind of things. So I just remember probably 2 hours after getting to sleep, everybody was just up again and going again and excited and trying to, and not even really trying. Like I said, it wasn't hard to
I think that
fit together.
From the mom perspective, I think that I ran on adrenaline for the very first year. I mean, I don't have any other way to explain just having 7 children after having 3.
Going, woo! I don't know how to do that because I have 3 right now.
So I want to save I want to save the story of how different kids reacted to being here for later episodes, but is there any wrap up you want to do to the actual adoption?
What about when we went to You can do whatever you want, but I just remember going to the family court here.
Oh yeah, that's kind of an amazing story because it'll really show you the perspective of the kids on one item of their life.
Yeah.
I think that when you adopt internationally, when you come back to the States, 6 months later you do a readoption so that it's in the books here too. Kind of formality, but also very, very important legally. And so I bought the kids all new clothes to go to court for like a 10-minute thing, really.
Yeah.
And it was Judge Moats in Taylor County because we found out that Marion County was a little more strict and required some things that I didn't agree with legally, like advertising in the paper that these children were for adoption, that kind of stuff. So the
I hope
boys,
they've changed that legislation too.
They haven't.
They haven't.
They
Oh my
haven't
gosh.
Goodness.
so the boys all had their khakis and their blue, dress shirts, and the girls all had matching dresses. And the judge asked each of the kids, "Are you married?" That you just kind of interacted with them and laughed, and they had a really good time with it. And so really all he needed to do was just hit the gavel and say, "You are now formally adopted and you're part of the family." But I think the most tear-jerking part of that day was when we came out of the courthouse and Damien said, "So we never have to do that again, right, Mom?" And I said, "No, we never have to do it again. You're stuck with us. You're part of the family forever." And he just started skipping down the sidewalk. And, that might sound like typical, but to know Damien, who felt like, because he was the oldest when he was in the orphanage, he felt like it was his responsibility to parent his siblings. And so that load lifted off of his shoulders, and he had a family, and he was in a skipping mood because of that. So we all went out to eat after that, and he was just smiling so much the whole time. It was wondrous.
I think that's a really beautiful wrap-up of just a small bit of your story, but just the adoption. I'm really, thank you so much for sharing.
You're welcome.
Sorry for crying.
That's okay. And I really, really look forward to sharing different parts of what's happened since then in the future. And Lori's the real MVP today. She went to wrangle the toddlers halfway through this story.
Lori.
Yes.
Thank you, Lori.
And so...
Get chocolate.
Yeah, we'll give you a snack.
We'll give you a fruit snack.
But yeah, thanks for joining us today, and we hope you really enjoyed this story. I think you got some really cool extra tidbits. If you've never read Kathleen's book, A Positive Adoption Story, you should really check that out. We're going to be relaunching it, like she said, with a brand new cover, a new subtitle. So check.
And a study guide in the back.
Yes, a study guide. So we will be linking to all of that so you can access it. But we really hope that you enjoyed this story. It was a unique perspective of international adoption. Good job, guys. And thanks for joining us today. See you next time.